All right, cool.
Cool.
Yeah, let's get started.
All right, awesome.
All right, so here we are, and I don't know, I guess first episode, so I guess I'll jump into welcome, Portrait Squad podcast number 1. And I don't know what to expect. This is going to be kind of a trial run. We'll see how things go. Just kind of expecting this to be more of kind of like a laid back just chat between the two of us and talking about yourself, your background, your history, as well as just maybe some industry stuff and trends and
Absolutely.
things we find interesting and things we don't find interesting, maybe things that annoy us, pet peeves, whatever. I'm sure we can, find some
a lot of
things
those.
too. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's something new I wanted to do for the Portrait Squad channel. There's so many, like we were talking about off camera earlier, there's just a ton of feature pages out there for portraits, and I just don't want to be another one that does nothing but repost people's work and that's it. Like, that's fine and all. It gets people some more exposure. I enjoy doing it. I'm the only one who runs Portrait Squad, and I just do it because I find it fun. And it's fun finding new artists and finding underrated portrait photographers and trying to get them out there and all that. But I want to take things to another level and start doing a podcast, start to get them know more about the artists behind the work, including not just the photographers, but also the models, makeup artists, whoever goes into doing the shoot, and just learn more about everybody and their work and go from there. But
That's great.
But yeah, I guess to get started, like I don't know, give us a little bit more background about yourself. How did you get started with portrait photography? I guess if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ed Sochacki. I am a photographer based out of Palos Heights, Illinois. The kind of journey to becoming a photographer for me was a really back-ended way. I've been in the marketing and advertising world since 1996.
Okay.
Started off working down in the West Loop of Chicago, right across from Harpo Studios over at Ambrosi and Associates.
Oh, okay, cool.
At the time, we were the world's largest retail catalog house. So we had everything from Saks Fifth Avenue, Herberger's, Yonkers, Parisian, Kmart, Sears, Harry and David. It was back in the day when you used to get those direct mail catalogs.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it started with
Still
that.
kind of do,
Yeah, not as much as
Not
it
as
used
much,
to be,
yeah.
but Chicago for the longest time was the central hub for
So we
all of
have
the
Chicago
catalogs.
to blame for all the junk mail that we used to throw away.
Oh yeah, or the internet, right? So
Right.
I started off as a designer. Was a designer for a year and a half. Then I got into the production and print production and management side of things. Was operations manager over there. I had a staff of 24 designers, 6 proofreaders, 3 image coordinators, and we worked very closely with our account executives, and then our photography studio, which was, we had 3 buildings on the same block. The company at the time had 200 photographers.
Oh shit, that's a lot. Okay.
I had never touched a camera in my life.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, were you doing any photography back then?
No,
Or no.
no. Matter of fact, my first experience, or my first foray into a camera was the week before my wife and I got married, and well, not before we got married, but before we went on our honeymoon. I picked up a Canon EOS.
Okay.
And so I had that, took that on the trip, and I didn't really know much about anything, but I got some really cool shots, and that was great. And then everything sat. Tried using it for sports, but kind of hard when I was playing semi-pro ball at the time.
Okay.
So I had to hand the camera to another teammate, and
Yeah.
photos would turn out awful. So, but then once I had kids, started taking more portraits of them, to the point where now they won't even let me take their photo.
Right.
But I was also involved with a lot of high school athletics, and did a lot of football, baseball, basketball games, and things like that.
And you did those up until pretty recently, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
So everything for me, as far as portrait photography went, I was invited. This is going back 2000. Well, now we're 19, so 2017. I got an invite to go to a shootout downtown over at Cinespace Studios.
Right.
And there were about 20 models there, and they invited a bunch of photographers from the area. And I paid my $600, and I'm like, well, I've never shot portrait photography or anything like that. But I was invited to that, and I had set up, and at the time I had maybe 2 speed lights and a strobe set up, and I got some really good shots and really positive feedback from the models that were at the event. And that kind of immediately transpired into, okay, well, come into the studio, let's shoot here. and then there was something about portrait photography for me that, you're telling a story.
Right.
And, the models that you work with or the subjects, it doesn't necessarily have to be a model, but the people that you were working with, everybody has a different face and a different expression.
Right.
And for me, what was a big draw was that using the lighting, you'd be able to shape and contour the face. So I started gravitating more and more to strobe photography.
Okay, interesting.
And especially in the studio, the big game changer for me was one day I decided to take the speed lights out, and I bought one of those 3 bracket systems, and mounted all 3 of the speed lights into the bracket, and I took it outside during the middle of the day.
Oh, yeah.
And popped a shot in what was heavy shadow and really harsh light right at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and first shot I got, I just looked at it, I go, holy cow, this is a whole
You get that super high dynamic range where it looks like it's something photoshopped. And,
you don't get the raccoon eyes,
Right,
you're balancing that shadow, and you still have, you're able to flip your subject around into the sun, and you've got enough power to overpower that, or at least create a fill light.
Yeah, and then for me, I've always noticed too, there's something about the sharpness too when you're using the off-camera lighting. It seems like it just pulls so much more sharpness out of the image, and for me, that's always been a big part of off-camera lighting that I really enjoy too.
It's the thing is that the color saturation that you get, that dynamic range, it's just so much more pronounced.
It is,
and there's less editing on the back
for
end.
sure. There's definitely been times when I'll pull an image off of a shoot, and especially I've noticed it, especially when I shoot midday for some reason, that it almost feels you don't even have to edit it. Like you throw a few points of contrast in it, and you're like, that's all I need. Like it's already there. And sometimes it feels like that's all. I usually do more than that. I usually don't stop at that. But sometimes you look at it and you're like, compared to something that you would normally spend an hour editing, and then you pull it off the camera and you hit a couple things in Lightroom, and next thing you know, like, man, that's all I have to do.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because people think that I'm not a natural light shooter. And I love natural light.
Sure.
But the reality of natural light is you are at the mercy of where that light is during that time of the day.
Exactly. Yep.
And for me, there's no creativity behind that.
Yep.
You can put somebody in front of a window, prop them up there, and you know that you've got a 3 o'clock sun coming. Well, okay, that's great. But what if you want to flip it around? You can't do that.
Right. You're definitely very limited in your compositions. Like wherever the light's coming from, it's fixed. You can't pick it up. You can't move that window. If it's a neon light hanging in some storefront window, it's fixed there. You can't move it.
Right. Which then leads you to the next thing is that like everything that you're seeing today, it's all been done.
Yes.
A storefront window shot with the sun coming in, you can only see so many images on Instagram. Yep. They get thousands of likes, and that's great, but it's nothing different.
Right.
So for me, I love going into abandoned locations. I shoot in Gary, Indiana a lot.
No, definitely, if you go on your profile, you'll definitely see, like, you shoot a lot in the studio, and it seems like when you're out of the studio, it's more often than not, it's usually in some sort of abandoned location. And it's cool.
And there's no power.
Right.
So I had to, maybe about a year ago, invested in all portable lithium-ion batteries for all my strobes.
Right.
And that, you're carrying probably about 150 pounds worth of gear around at these locations, and sometimes you're walking a mile to get in these buildings. But when you're in these locations, it's pitch black.
Right.
And, you've got the challenge of lighting your model, and then you have the challenge of looking at that background and the scenery that's there and figuring out how you want to create something.
Right. Yeah. Because sometimes you got to bring up that ambient lighting in those conditions because there is none. Like you're just shooting against pitch blackness, even with a strobe, if you're not lighting your background in some sort of way.
Right.
Right.
So the cool thing is that you're able to bounce there, and now you're looking at what light modifiers you have, and you've got a beauty dish. I'll bring 48-inch parabolics with me. I'll bring strip boxes, and the whole studio comes with me when I go on location. So a lot of times it's 2 hours of packing, 3 hours of shooting, and another hour and a half of packing.
But you get a ton of, it opens up the possibilities though, because you never know what you're going to need when you get there, or what sort of creativity is going to strike you when you get there. And you might leave thinking like, well, no, I've got these shots planned, this is what I want to do, but then you get there and then, oh man, like that's what I really want to do. And then if you don't have that piece of gear, you're kicking yourself in the ass because you spent 2 hours packing all that gear and driving 3 hours to get there, maybe sneaking into a location that you shouldn't be in, and then, damn, like I didn't bring that trigger, I didn't bring that one light, I didn't bring that whatever, and yeah, it's
Yeah, and then you know
Yep.
the situation, and that one thing that you decided to be lazy to not pack in the car is that one thing that ruins your entire day.
Exactly. Yeah, like we were just talking off camera, like how many times I showed up to a shoot and I bring all my off-camera lights, all my strobes, all my flashpoint gear, and then I get there and I forgot the damn trigger. I didn't put in my camera bag, and now the one $40 piece is the one crucial key or the link to firing all that gear, and now I don't have it. And maybe I've got a strobe with me or a speed light I can pop in my camera and use that to control it, but more often than not, I'm not bringing those if I'm thinking I'm
Right.
going to mostly be using a strobe. And yeah, it kind of goes back to that gear or that idea of if you're going to pack that much weight and spend that much time packing and bring it, you might as well, I guess, bring everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of the definitely the downsides of shooting with some sort of off-camera light is the gear you need and the potential for forgetting things, and then the shoot not exactly being able to go as you planned. But I know for me, I definitely love the look of it. Like you were saying earlier, like the first time you went outside and like popped the strobe, like midday sun, and got that, you look at the back of the camera and like, wow, this looks like something like out of Photoshop. This looks like something that's not even real. Like it looks just different than everything else that you're used to.
Yeah, it's cinematic lighting.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
The first time you and I met was at a meetup.
It was, yeah.
And we were down over at was it Pingtown Park?
Yeah, down Chinatown,
And I remember I pulled up, parked the car, and I had my son's red wagon. I filled it up with all my gear.
I remember that.
Brought it in.
Yeah.
And they made the big announcement. The models were all there, and I'm setting up my gear, and all of a sudden everybody up and walks
left.
away, and I go, I just got my softbox set up.
I remember that because everybody took off and went around and started shooting in different areas, and then like maybe 45 minutes, an hour later, they decided, okay, like now's the time. The group's gonna move over to the next location.
Yeah.
And I walked by, and you're still like, nope, fuck it. I've already got my stuff set up. I'm gonna keep shooting. I've got my light dialed in. Actually, I think at that point you're happy because like nobody's walking through your background anymore.
Yeah,
So you're like,
it
yep,
was
I'm
nice.
staying. Yeah.
And then the bad thing too is that now you're there at golden hour, and everybody up and decides, okay, well, sun's going down. It's
Right.
low lighting conditions, and yeah, I was able to light up that entire pagoda that was out there.
You were, yeah, and that's where I ran back into you later in the evening on my way back, and I saw that, and that was kind of around the same time. At that point, I definitely had my first strobe. I had like one of the Flashpoint Explorers by then. I don't think I maybe had one Rotolite at that point, one of the little Neos. I was starting to use that as like an off-camera LED kind of at night. But like for me, I was still very much early in that phase, and then I came by, and you had like three of these like Explorer 600s, like two of them on the ground. You had like a bunch of like 3 or 4 like Neos going. You had like the 2 young Neo strip lights in the background.
Yeah,
and
then
you
I
had this
think-
incredibly elaborate system, and I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna sit down here for a little while and just watch this guy and see what he's up to. And yeah, that was the first time I met you.
And I think that's where a lot of that
interesting experience.
creativity, yeah, and I think that's where like a lot of the fun side, the
Yes.
creative side comes out. It's
Yeah.
like, well, if I put this light here at the base, I can shoot that straight up this pillar, and
Right.
now I've got a column effect there, and then I
Yep.
can take this and come around the side, and I've got my hair light on my model.
Right.
You're separating them from the subject, and then you still have enough illumination there
sure.
so that it's not this immediate spill off
Yep.
where it's just a picture of somebody, and then it looks like somebody's got a giant vignette on it.
Yeah, exactly. And and you keep talking about the creativity side of portrait photography, and like for myself, like that's how I definitely started to kind of get into it. Like I very much started just doing like the city thing and going downtown and shooting around Chicago and doing street photography, cityscape stuff, kind of landscape-ish, and that's how I got into it. But then, to a certain degree, there's certainly a creative element to it. Finding unique compositions, finding different places in the city that nobody else has been to, different angles on a similar location. There's definitely creativity that goes into it, but to a certain degree, you have a lot less control over it than what you would in a portrait photography location, or setup, because in a lot of cases, you're just kind of at the whim of the weather. You're at the whim of the light of day, and a lot of forces that are just completely out of your control, or even just trying to find an interesting subject in the city to shoot. Sometimes you're just sitting there for 30 minutes, an hour, waiting for somebody cool to walk by to make a shot, because without a person there, it's just kind of boring and bland, but it's not until somebody moves into that scene that it becomes interesting. And that's certainly very cool in its own right, but I really enjoyed the aspect of portrait photography where I could kind of come in and kind of shape the scene myself and work with another person who's also creative and maybe come up with like a set design or costume design or some sort of theme. And to me, that's always very interesting, especially the aspect of adding other people into it and their own creativity and like starting to build on top of that. That's definitely something that, like for myself, I've always found very enjoyable about shooting portraits. But.
Yeah. Now, and to that point, a photographer is responsible for the lighting, for the composition, at the same time, the model that you're working with brings that element of creativity too.
Right.
I've worked with a number of the same models, and I work with them a lot.
Right.
And for me, I do that because when we're on location, the last thing you want is an unknown element as to, well, how do I light this model? Because everybody should be lit differently.
Sure.
I like to go on location with the models that I work with, and then, no, but for me, having a known entity that I have worked with multiple times and knowing exactly what they're going to do and what's going to come out of that shoot makes that 2 hours of packing, the hour and a half of unpacking, dragging all that gear around, it makes it worth it to me, and it makes it that much easier to say, I'm going to pack this entire studio up and I'm going to spend an entire day with this person shooting, creating art. And
because to a certain degree, you kind of know what to expect. You know what you're going to get. There's that, like you said, there's less of an unknown. You know that they know what they're doing, and you're not evaluating somebody for the first time and trying to build that rapport and build that back and forth. And you can just focus more on just having fun and actually doing the shoot itself. Right. Yeah, that's all exactly kind of along the same lines of some of the same things I've experienced on my side of it, and it's good stuff. I really enjoy all of that. But yeah, I mean, as far as jumping back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, like some of the other creative work you do you still do any of the other creative work outside of just photography? Or
so I own a design marketing agency.
Right.
So we do app development, websites, your traditional print multimedia stuff.
Yeah.
So it's the entire Adobe Creative Suite. The photography, the funny thing is I would shoot, we develop and design websites for our clients.
Yeah.
And they would provide me with really bad photos of their food.
Yes.
And I said, well, gosh, here's a really nice functioning website.
Right. It's got a nice wrapper to it.
Yeah, right. But these visuals don't go with that. And, people purchase things with their eyes and they make decisions right away. You're better off having a website with no pictures on it than having a website with half-assed pictures on it. So I started doing, some of the stuff with the food photography. But, we actually just last week created the, essentially it's the cannabis app it's the Starbucks app of the cannabis business.
Okay. All right.
My client, we've been working on it for 2 years. It launched on 4/20 last year. We had a major update that came out 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And now it will be a nationwide available app, and dispensaries, as dispensaries come on board, individuals can load their card and essentially purchase their medicinal marijuana using that, which means it's safer for everybody because they don't have to carry around a bunch of cash on hand. It's safer for the dispensaries because they're not storing that cash. But but the app development's been a big thing, and so I don't know when the podcast will come out, but if it's within a week, we're going to have. We had been working for the past year and a half. Matter of fact, everything I've been shooting has all been geared around a new app called Agency. And it's the Agency app, and it's for models, photographers, hair and makeup artists, and stylists to collaborate with.
Okay.
So, Instagram is limiting. It's not really the best tool to communicate with individuals. We have project planning in there. There's networking. If you ever showed up at a shoot and, all of a sudden you don't have a model or the photographer flakes, what's nice about the app is you can find photographers that are near you or models near you, work with them, collaborate. And then we'll have tutorials on there, and there's a magazine component to it as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like a very well-rounded aspect. Like, there's definitely been some areas out there, some other websites who have tried kind of doing something that sounds like similar, but it sounds like you're definitely looking to kind of take this to the next level. I mean, it sounds like this is going to be a much more thought-out process by somebody who's actually in the industry and actually cares about.
Yeah,
involved.
For me, I came from the creative side, but then also from the operations side. I was also an account executive at a design firm, so I was doing account coordination and account management, and we used to hire photographers, and I would deal with my clients all the time, and so you'd be translating back and forth, and the client has this need or that need. Take small businesses or mid-sized businesses, for example. that's a very underserved market.
Yeah.
And we have so many photographers and models running around shooting and creating content for Instagram to make money off of,
Yeah.
yet nobody is benefiting off of that. This app is designed for the small business user or the mid-sized business user to say, hey, I have a product, I'm
Right.
looking for a photographer, I'm looking for a model.
Right.
And then essentially build a team right there.
Okay. And pull all those different elements
hire a
together,
team. Yeah, and you can put your team together on the spot, and then that team, once it's put together, payments can go through the app.
Okay, wow.
This way you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about showing up and somebody not having money.
Right.
They can move that money over to them, and that money gets dispersed over to the individual.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's actually incredibly interesting. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing this as it comes out, because it sounds like it's something that pretty much anybody who's looking to set up shoots would definitely be looking to use, or could at least benefit from in some
Well,
degree.
and even just finding somebody
Yeah.
that suits
Yeah.
your style. We have categories in there. So
Yeah.
there's portrait photography, corporate photography, we
Yeah.
have product photography.
Yeah.
There's even a section in there for pets.
Okay.
So, if you're a photographer that you're multidisciplined,
Yeah.
you're going to be able to find those projects that are out there for you. Now,
Right.
granted, it's going to take a lot to get these small businesses on there, but I think
Yeah.
if, we're working heavily on marketing that
Right.
once it comes out, and we're going to be going around to these small businesses. But
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I've been working with so many models as frequently and shooting as often as I have been is to kind of build that entire portfolio of content for that app.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is something that you're doing in conjunction with somebody else. Or is this just entirely on?
This is me and my partner that is on the design side of
Okay.
the business. So it's my same partner that we did the app for the cannabis industry.
Okay, cool.
So
Oh, very cool.
big networking. We have over 14. We have 15 apps now in the App Store. That
Oh, wow,
we put
no
out
kidding.
in the last 3 years.
No shit,
But
yeah, I
this
had no
one
idea.
is a big networking one. It's
Yeah.
a creative one. This is a pet project of mine that I've
Yeah.
been working
and
on.
it's
for
almost
the
done. You
past-
said, or it should be out pretty soon, or is it already out?
Well, we just went through beta on it, and it is likely going to be bundled up over this weekend and submitted to Apple. So we're hoping that next week it'll be in the store and
Wow.
available.
Okay, so that's coming up real quick. Yeah.
Yeah, I just finished the
Very
skins on the homepage and the intro screen, so that's all put together now.
All right, that's awesome. So once that's out and done, I mean, obviously there's gonna be a lot of maintenance, a lot of kind of keeping up with it, but anything planned for once this app? Sounds like this has probably been taking up quite a bit of your time. Do you have anything kind of on the backside of that? Any other big plans? Any new big projects to kind of fill its shoes once that one's done?
Well, once that's out, I started kind of eliminating some of my more marketing-focused clients
Okay.
to focus more on the photography side of things. Training for me is something, I field a lot of questions on Instagram.
Oh, I
and
bet
I'm
you
more than
do,
happy to ask,
Yeah.
answer questions that
Yeah.
photographers have. A lot of it has to do with lighting.
Well, yeah, that's definitely
So-
your style is heavily kind of influenced by that for sure. And a lot of people seem very confused by lighting and they don't really know where to begin. It seems like in a lot of cases.
And the thing is, it's not that hard. Like, I tell everybody, I haven't been shooting for that long.
Right.
And the thing is you have to, as an artist, not be afraid to try something new.
Right.
And then when you try something new, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Of course, yeah.
Don't get frustrated and say, oh, well, this didn't turn out and I'm going to throw the speed light out. There's things that you can learn. And there's a technical side. I always take those quizzes and those tests, like, are you ENFJ,
Right.
whatever. I always land 48%, 52%, or I'm right down that middle.
Yep.
Lighting for me is technical, but it's also creative.
Sure it is, yeah.
So it's that combination of the two, and I think that's why I'm driven to strobes and artificial lighting as much as I am.
Yep.
And even these days now, even with LEDs.
Right.
But what I want to do is the models that have worked with me that have been extremely dedicated and put a lot of time in, I want to make sure that they succeed.
Yep.
I want to work with them and help them get more paying gigs, and that's what this entire app is about. It's not just for photographers. The industry in Chicago especially is really upside down right now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of creatives have been taken advantage of.
Right.
And so I kind of want to use this app as a way to right the ship on that.
Okay. So, so you mentioned earlier you were talking about training, and I know recently you did your first workshop. You kind of did one around Christmas. Kind of want to jump into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So how did that go, and what was that all about? And
You know,
can I do any more of that?
I certainly plan on it. The space that I have here is probably maximized as much as possible.
Yeah.
It it was really messed up. Anybody that's shot in here knows that it was very cramped quarters prior to the event. I had Sophia Ornadas. She's Sophia1_XOXO.
Yeah, I'll link to her down below.
Yeah, she came in for a week straight and worked with me getting the place in order. And a lot of stuff went into storage. We cleaned the place up. We were able to have 5 models here. I had 6 photographers, and we ran 2 sessions. So everything was set up. We had a Christmas tree set up. We had 4 different stations that people were able to shoot at, and then everything was lit using LEDs, and a couple of people brought some flash in, and I had my flash available if anybody wanted to use it. But the big thing was with that space, you couldn't have the big modifiers up there.
Right.
But it worked out well. I think the people that attended the event got some great shots. We had some wonderful models. We had 3, or actually 4 published models that were here all day with us. Photos that the individuals were posting turned out really nice. They were very happy with it.
Yeah.
This was just a straight shooting, event. So there was no education side of that. But going forward, certainly plan on doing more targeted events where we'll be tackling, 1 light setups, maybe 2 light setups, or even 3. So, composition is something that you can look at a book and talk about, but creating light, dynamic light that, in all situations is something that I think if more people understood and knew, the price of gear isn't what it used to be for strobes.
Not at all. It's definitely come down quite a bit, especially with some brands like Flashpoint who are producing, in my opinion, I mean, I've never used pro photo equipment, but when I compare them on spec sheets, like it's hard to justify spending 4 or 5 times the amount that you would where, okay, maybe it breaks, so what, buy 4 more. And I'll tell you, I've been on location, especially taking the stuff outside.
You put a big 40-inch or 48-inch parabolic on it, and that is at the mercy of the wind. And with assistance and no assistance, or even with sandbags, it'll go. I've lost a couple of strobes to Lake Michigan.
I've lost one to, I was doing an engagement shoot with my very first Explorer 600, and I had it for a while, but at that point I already had it for about a year, but it was the first one I ever owned, and I had it set up. There was no wind whatsoever. I had it on a C-stand. I felt like it was pretty good. Had one of the Westcott Rapid Box XLs on it. And over in Lincoln Park, there's that little lily pond that's over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then out of nowhere, one gust of wind came and took it, and it took a dip in the pond, and that was the end of that light. And the worst part about it is I let it dry out. I threw in a bucket of sand, or not sand, but a bucket of rice for a couple days. Pulled it back out, put the battery in it, and everything worked except the actual strobe. Even the modeling lamp worked. Put a new bulb in it, still nothing. Everything on that worked. The LCD worked, the beeps worked. I'd fire it, it would beep and trigger. And the only thing that it wouldn't do is flash, which is the one thing you needed to do as
I had that happened to a 200 with mine, and I did the same thing. It fell in the water, I immediately took it up. Matter of fact, the flash went off under the water, and I thought for sure it was gone. Immediately took the battery out, put it in a thing of rice, and it sat there for a week. It was really hard not to want to touch it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I pulled it out, and it's been fine.
Oh, that's awesome, yeah.
I have had one of the strobes go down. I hit off of a rock, and the battery shattered.
Oh, no.
Bought a replacement battery, but the high-speed sync is now off. I had to go in and mark that specific strobe, which is sitting over there, because I'll set up in the studio, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my power ratios, and I'm like, why is this not, something is off. It took me a while to figure out that it was actually the high-speed sync that was off. Because in the studio here with those 600s, I'll shoot at 1/250th, 1/5000th of a second, because it's too much power for in here. Because even at 1/128th power,
it's a lot.
I'm also shooting f1.4 or 2.8. It's still too much.
It is.
So, but the equipment now, you can pick up a 600-watt strobe from Flashpoint or Godox, and it's $600, $700. The Pro Photo, you're looking at, what is it, $2,700.
Yeah. And that's the thing I always talk about people, or I talk to people about, is when you look at the cost of investment to get into it. I mean, you're spending $2,000, $3,000 on a camera. You're spending, $1,000, $2,000 per lens, and you've got multiple lenses, and you talk about all that money that you're investing in a camera system, and then you come back and you're like, yeah, but lighting gear is so expensive. It's like for $1,000, like not even. You can get yourself a single light setup. You can get yourself a 2-light setup, with an Explorer 600 and a good Westcott rapid box, or one of the the Adorama branded ones, whatever it may be, even a cheap one off of Amazon, and then get yourself like an 8200 or whatever, and you've got a 2-light setup. You can do so much with that. It's a few $100.
And you tell people that, and like even look at the cost of speed lights.
Yeah,
today.
Just the cost of a couple speed lights.
You can get a good speed light for $80.
Yeah, absolutely. Get one of the young
and I tell everybody, I go, look, I said, if you're going to get it, do not get the TTL version. You're throwing money away.
Yeah.
And that TTL acts as a crutch for people that. Look, you can put it on the camera and immediately fire something and get something usable out of that. But it's preventing you from learning what your power ratio should be and what you can do with that. And
I think for a lot of people just new to it, it can be frustrating because then they take a shot and then it's not the same as the last one they took. And then they're confused. It's, well, the camera metered it slightly differently, and that metering, like it gave a different flash value. And then I think more than anything, it confuses people more than it does to try to help them, if that makes any sense.
Oh, no, well, absolutely. And it depends on what metering system you're using too, right? Some people will go center point or they'll go wide. And so if they don't understand what is actually happening with that gear, that's why just go manual, save yourself. I know with the 600, the difference between a TTL version and non-TTL version is $150.
Yeah, you're saving quite a bit there. I mean, that price right there, you can easily invest into a good quality, like 36-inch octabox from Adorama, and that's that cost right there just by taking out the TTL, for sure.
Yeah, and that gives you more creativity with things.
It does, yeah. And so speaking of gear, you're a Sony shooter, right?
I am.
Yeah.
So let's see,
everybody loves talking about gear. Everybody loves hearing about gear. So yeah, I figured.
3 years ago, I came from Nikon. I was still on a crop sensor D7100 at the time, which was nice, and I had some really nice glass, but it was a crop sensor.
Yep.
The A6000 came out.
Yes.
And I said, well, gosh, I don't want to carry around all of this stuff. And the 6000 had that small little lens, and it was so light. I'm like, well, I can throw that in the pocket and just use it for my kids.
Sure.
So the day that I got it, I took it out, and I was with my son over at the park, started taking some photos. I go, holy crap, the speed of the focus was something out of this world.
Right.
And when you're coming, and keep in mind too that was one of the first mirrorless cameras out there.
Yeah.
And you compare that to a D7100, even with a f2.8 lens.
Right.
The focus speed was like 10 times faster.
Right.
And it wasn't missing a shot.
And more focus points.
Yeah.
And you're actually seeing what you're going to get beforehand.
And I'm looking at that was the one thing that was the hardest thing to get used to. The A6000 had a little blackout issue.
Yeah.
So. For portraits or shooting a little kid or a pet is great.
Yeah.
But then I took it the next day, and I'm like, well, I'm going to bring this out to a football game.
Sporting, yeah.
And so I'm out there, and now I rented the 70-200 lens.
Right.
And I've got it on there, and I'm looking through this thing and looking at my shots, and I go, well, the guy with the football is all the way out over here, and I'm just getting his legs. What in the world is going on? So it did take some adjustment to get used to. But then right after that 6000 came out, they announced the A7R2.
Right, yep.
And I go, okay, well, I'm going to get the R2. So I returned the 6000, jumped straight over to the R2. Problem was, there was only one lens out.
Yeah.
And the lens that I was shooting was for the APS-C version.
Right, okay.
So I had a 35 Zeiss, and that was the only thing I had for 5 months.
Right.
And finally, they started coming out with more and more.
Yeah, so you jumped into Sony in the very early days, before they even had a whole lot before they started to fill out their lens lineup then. And and I don't even know if they really had any good adapters back then. And even if they did, you were on Nikon anyway, so trying to buy a bunch of Canon lenses
So I purchased, here, now the funny story about that is, I did have a 70-200 Nikon lens, and I had the Metabones adapter, which for Nikon, there was no autofocus.
Right.
I went and I took that R2, and for 3 months, I shot basketball and football with the focus peaking on. And I had so many incredible shots shooting sports manually.
That's nuts.
Looking at the back of the screen with the focus peaking on.
That's nuts.
And that was a game changer, just to be able to know that I'm shooting with a non-native lens in manual focus, and I'm getting these shots.
Right.
So the second that 70-200 came out, and
Yep.
all of the Nikon lenses came out. The Sony lenses came out. I hopped on it, and I went straight to the G Master.
Yep.
Was expensive as hell.
Yeah,
but
for
the
sure.
quality off of those G Masters, the 85 G Master is a dog.
Yeah.
As far as speed goes, but the rendering,
It's a big lens.
It's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I still don't have that lens myself. I'm still shooting in the 85 1.8, but even that lens I've been more than happy with. I had the 85 1.8, still have it for Canon. And the 85 has always been a go-to lens for me, especially for portrait photography. There's just something about it. Like, I don't know about you, but for me, like, when I start a portrait shoot, I tend to start tight and work my way back.
Yep.
And for me, like, I feel like with an 85, it's like one of those lenses, like, it's almost impossible to take a bad shot with it. Especially depending if you've got your lighting set up and you're working with a good model, like, it's almost impossible to take a bad shot.
Yeah.
And for me, like, it's always a great feeling when you can go into a shoot and, like, start off the shoot with, like, you know, a good dozen photos that you're like, oh fuck yeah, I love these, and know that, like, everything from that point on is just gravy. You know?
I'll take. So I have the 20 millimeter Zeiss, the 35 G Master, the 55 1.8.
Yes.
The 85 G Master, and then the 100 millimeter G Master, the
The
smooth
STF
transfer.
or- okay.
So I got the STF lens, and it's like, ooh, well, that's closer to an f4 that you're shooting with.
Yeah.
And the thing was, okay, so if you're taking that outdoors, you're gonna have enough light anyways, and I'm dragging those strobes around.
Right.
I have no problem going with that lens. So my go-to lens on location is always the 100 millimeter.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
And I love the 85, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, but that 100 millimeter, even at f4 rating,
Right.
is way faster than the 85 at f1.4.
Is it?
It,
Just in
lightning
terms of
fast.
focus, you mean?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
just to focus, boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom. And then you're using the strobes anyway, so
Right.
so you're never lacking in power. And I
Right.
just love the way the subjects come out at that
Yeah,
100
yeah,
millimeter lens.
yeah.
I'm waiting for that 135.
I keep waiting for it too. I've been hearing rumors that Sony's gonna be coming out, or Zeiss, or whoever it's gonna be. I think it's Sony.
Well, Zeiss came out with that joke 135 2.8,
Is
which
it a 2.8? Okay.
makes no sense.
Right. Why
You've
not?
got Sony already has a 70-200 2.8.
Right.
Who in their right mind is going to go buy a 2.8?
Right.
Prime
and
lens.
especially for whatever cost.
Oh,
it's at. I'm
it was
sure it's not
ridiculous.
cheap,
They had
yeah.
to drop it $400, but
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
that-
definitely.
that was
I'm
one
waiting.
of the biggest joke lenses of the year.
I'm waiting for that 135 as well. I was tempted to maybe buy the Canon version because I do have the adapter for Canon, and maybe get the 135. They've got an f2, I think. I was thinking about maybe getting that just 'cause I would love to have that long focal range.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've been thinking about maybe getting it for weddings because I do a fair number of weddings. And to be honest, like, I love the 70-200. It's a great lens, but damn if that thing ain't big and weigh a lot. And when you're carrying a bag on your back the entire day, it's a lot of weight to be lugging around. And for me, like, it'd be great to have that, that 135, and then, put it on either an A7 III or an A7 R3, and then just use it, like, use the A7 R3 in like a APS-C mode, and they can just punch in, and you basically get the equivalent of like a
205,
200, like a 200 mil, and then you don't have to carry. You lose all that flexibility in between, but you're also saving a ton of weight. And for me personally, I have never had that issue where, like, oh man, I just needed that in between, like a couple steps back, a couple steps forward. I'm usually good enough.
Well, and if you've got the R3, you've got 42.2 megapixels anyways. So going to that APS-C mode just to get that quick little zoom in there, it's still the 21 whatever.
Oh,
plus
for sure. Yeah, I
megapixel.
mean, it's not as crisp as a full-on full frame camera shot, but I mean, for the most part, like, you look at it, like, unless you're pixel peeping, and even if you are, honestly, like, it's still fine. Like, in most cases, it's still a great shot, and like, I've never had anybody complain. I've never had anybody say, well, I don't know, that shot, it's really beautiful. It
Did
captures
you hit the
moment.
zoom button on that?
Yeah, it's a really great shot. I love the emotion in it. I love that you got it nice and tight, but it seems a little soft. Like, nobody's ever said that. Like, they love it. So, I mean, for me, it's a great option. And it's something I definitely I'd love to have. I'd love to have that option. Right now I do with the 85, so I get the equivalent of like a 135, 140, which ain't bad, but I'd love to have that little bit of extra room for it.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's been the one lens, like, as far as what is coming next for me, that 135 is sitting there. There's money set aside for that, and I've been waiting for the past year.
Yeah, well, like the A7S III, people have been waiting and waiting and waiting. They've been talking about it for the last year. Everybody keeps thinking to me the next big show is going to be they're going to launch it, and then this
either
thing
Photokina,
or even just a couple days ago when the whole live thing went, I saw a bunch of people on Facebook like, oh, here it comes, and then it was the
No.
A6400. It's like denied once again, and Sony's just sitting back like, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they're trying to fine tune it or if they're trying to like go and swing for the fences and throw some really big features in it, and they're just having some difficulty getting it to be at that level that they want it. I don't know, but
Yeah. Well, and you're a Canon guy or a company. You came from Canon.
yeah.
Canon and Nikon both came out with their mirrorless cameras. Now, I remember when Sony came out with theirs, the big knock was no lens, no lens, no lens.
Yes.
And what does Canon do and what does Nikon do? They release their products with no lens.
Yeah, especially Nikon, in my opinion. I think they really kind of blew it. Like, especially even when you look at the roadmap, you're like, what the fuck are you thinking? And they're talking about this big, giant, gaping hole in their camera to let in all this light. And then their next roadmap for the next 2 to 3 years is all like 1.8 lenses. And it's,
Yeah, I think that what is it? There's the 0.9 that they have.
Yeah,
that
they
they're
got the
talking
1,
about. Like
0.95.
that's 3-4 years off.
Yeah, exactly. And you're talking about how you have the advantage, and that's all you got. Like, Sony's already got those.
And they don't even have.
I mean, they're not
the
Sony lenses, but
The
they
image
can do it.
stabilization isn't in there. On
I think on the Nikon they've got what is it? I think they've got 3-axis. and then-
right. Okay. Well, one doesn't have the
remember.
eye focus, and then the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
one
yeah.
doesn't have the image stabilization. So it's like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Canon had better offerings with their lenses. I'm still not happy with the camera. Everybody compares their EOS R to like a mirrorless 5D. I don't see that. To me, it's a mirrorless 6D because it's got the 1 memory card slot. In terms of the number of megapixels it has, I feel like it's absolutely a mirrorless 6D camera, and everybody's waiting for the mirrorless 5D version to come out. And now the rumor is it's gonna be 100 megapixels. And honestly, for me, like if I'm not shooting professional, great, it's got 2 memory cards now, which I'm guessing it will. But at 100 megapixels, I'm not gonna use that for a wedding. Right. I'm not gonna use that for any sort of work where I'm gonna be shooting more than 100
You'd be
to
shooting
200
2
photos.
weddings a year and still processing the images.
Yeah, I mean, I'd need some supercomputer in order. I mean, not obviously not, but I mean, the file sizes just be so ridiculous. And I'm sure they'll have a way to compress them, like compressed RAW. But even still, I don't know, 100 megapixel files, even in compressed RAW version, they're probably still going to be 50, 60 megapixels.
Well, and pop that into
files.
Photoshop.
Yep.
Throw a couple layers on there, and now you've got
Yep.
a half a gig photo
Yeah.
that you're trying to retouch.
Yeah, it's
So,
nuts. So I don't know. Canon just keeps they keep jumping from one extreme to the other. For years, they were always the lower megapixels. Now they're going to the other end, and it seems to me like they're having difficulty finding that middle ground. It seems like, to be honest, it seems like they're having difficulty just listening to their user base. It seems like, I mean, there's no shortage of people telling them exactly what they want, and for whatever reason, they're just not delivering it. Whereas Sony, on the other hand, not to like play them up and be a fanboy constantly, but it seems like for the most part, they are trying to deliver on what the bulk of their users are asking for.
Right.
And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, and again, it's not to knock Canon or Nikon. At the end of the day, you're out there to create an image,
Yes.
and it doesn't matter what you're using. Canon, Nikon, Fuji, Olympus.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
But
taking a good image shouldn't be predicated based off of
Yes.
what brand you're
exactly,
shooting.
and it's more about the sensor. It's less about the sensor size than composition. It's less about the frame rate than it is about lighting or capturing emotion or whatever. But at the same time, like if I can get a piece of gear that's going to do more and make my job a little bit easier, so I can focus more on those things like composition and lighting and working with the model and thinking about my background and have to think less about the tool that I'm using. Like I'm gonna go ahead and take the tool that simplifies me from getting from the idea to actually snapping a photo. Like I want to move through that process as quickly as possible, remove as much of the camera, playing with that as much as possible, and get to creating as quickly as I can. To me, that's the more fun part.
Well, and to that point, everybody says, "Oh, well, you have to be creative to be a photographer." I tell everybody, these shots, it's 5% of it's creativity.
Yeah.
I said, this is a blue collar profession.
Yeah.
I don't care how you want to look at it. It is blue collar, and
You
if
don't need a degree.
you
Yeah, you
do
can
not
learn.
want to drag your gear out there, you don't want to go hiking, you don't want to go to find those locations and put the time in and do the legwork, you're not going to get the shots.
Right.
Because those shots that don't take any effort are shots everybody gets.
Exactly, and I think that extends across all genres of photography, whether it's landscape photography, whether it's portrait photography, cityscape photography, whatever it may be. Like it's those shots where you go the extra mile and you do the thing that nobody else wants to do, like setting up the lighting and dragging it all out and getting there, or going off that abandoned location, or going to hiking up into the hills into that place where you can't just drive right off the trailhead. Those are like we're in the city environments. It's the people who are climbing up on top of roofs and trying to find the buildings where they can get up. Like those are the photos that do set themselves apart. And I definitely don't advocate anybody breaking the law or doing anything that's get themselves injured. But at the end of the day, that really is kind of you do have to find ways within reason to kind of push yourself and do the things that other people won't do because it's inconvenience or uncomfortable, for sure.
Well, and the nice thing too, so Gary, everybody says, why do you go to Gary? Why do you go to Gary? Well, if you contact their film and tourism department,
Yes.
they will issue a permit
You can,
for
yeah.
$50.
For $50,
just $50. You can be there all day. They have 11 different locations that you can go to. For $50, you can set your gear up. You don't have to worry about cops coming and then running away and then leaving $20,000 worth of gear
Exactly,
behind.
yeah.
It's the best $50. Great America, I think, is $75.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a $50 permit pass to Gary. Give me a model, and
Right.
I will be happy all
Exactly.
day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, and then you're going out of your way. Yeah, it's not downtown Chicago. It's not pretty. It's not whatever. It's a little bit out of the way. But again, you're going somewhere that very few people tend to go because, for one, a lot of people just, if it's not a nice kind of urban location, a lot of people are maybe afraid to go there or whatever. But I'm sure you've been
Quite
so
honestly, I
often-
think Gary's safer than Chicago.
Yeah. I've heard a ton of people say that. I've spent a little bit of time there, but not nearly as much as you have. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely gotten the same impression from the little bit of time I've spent around there.
The police department stops by if they know you're going to be there.
Yep.
You tell them in the permit office where you're going to be. They will send a police officer will drive by just to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
I absolutely love shooting there. I've shot Mercy Hospital, the train station, the church, which is now condemned,
Yes,
which is very
unfortunately.
dangerous. And a matter of fact, if there's anything that I can tell people, if you are thinking about going to that cathedral in Gary, do not go there. It is not safe. It's condemned. The
Yep.
floors are falling apart.
Yep.
People are getting seriously injured.
Yeah, and the roof like caved in like a year or two ago.
Entirely caved in,
Yeah.
and they put netting up, and that netting is now destroyed.
Yeah.
The ground itself, the floor, the wood boards in there are deteriorating.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it's a really, really
Oh,
cool
it's a
location.
beautiful
It's
location.
Yeah, with
Beautiful
that big stained glass
location.
window. Yeah, and
Yep.
even when the ceiling came in, there's been plenty of shots there.
Oh, yeah.
Where, especially at night, and you can see the stars. And
Oh, yeah.
It's a really cool location. It's unfortunate that it's gotten to such a condition. But
It was that big fire, and then a snowstorm did it.
yeah, and the fire, I think, wasn't that with somebody spinning wool in there? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is another fucking thing that pisses me off. Where you get all these locations that. There's another one I think in Ohio that got burned, another church or a school or something.
It's
that
just
got burned
people
down.
being stupid.
Being stupid. Yeah, you're in these old buildings where things are dry rotted and dried out, and people are spinning wool at a few thousand degrees. And what do you think's gonna happen?
No. Yeah. Next thing you know,
Unfortunately.
you'll have somebody spinning wool on top of a skyscraper hanging
Right.
over the edge just for a shot.
Yep.
And for what? Instagram fame?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a limit to again, like you gotta do it within reason. I mean, yeah, it's maybe different. It's maybe something nobody else has done before. But at the end of the day, if it's gonna get yourself or somebody else killed or hurt, like it's not worth it.
Right.
And yeah, unfortunately, you see a lot of that. And then the hard part for other people like us, you want to go out and actually shoot these locations like legitimately, is it becomes harder and harder because then these communities, these municipalities, they start thinking, what, maybe we shouldn't do it at all. Maybe we should just pull back all these permits and not allow people. Because people are just going to ignore the permits, go in there and destroy these places anyway,
Right.
make it unsafe. And unfortunately, you do see that from time to time, which definitely sucks. But yeah, it is an unfortunate reality in terms of people trying to get that Instagram photo. But
And at the end of the day, what do those likes get you?
yeah,
You talk to photographers, and they can have 1,000 likes on a photo. That doesn't lead to a paying job. Yeah, I
No.
don't know anybody that has gotten paying gigs off of Instagram.
Yeah.
Facebook's a little bit more productive if you're a photographer. I think a lot of the more serious models are on Facebook because they can network a little bit more.
Yep.
But Instagram is, they eat your content, they make the profit off of
Yep.
it, and let's not even get into how bad their compression is with color.
right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, it's amazing when you upload something and you look at it and like, that's not what I remember exporting. Like, what the fuck happened?
Oh, I
There's
gotta
so
check
many
my
ti-
eyes.
There's so many times I'm like, should I just delete this shit? Like this does not. And then I look back at Photoshop. And I'm
Oh
like,
shit!
Yeah.
But now you can't delete it because if you delete it, then Instagram says, "Oh well,
Yeah.
now we have to shadow ban you."
Right, yeah, or some other ridiculous thing, yeah. Like it's all a bit ridiculous for sure. I don't know, Instagram, I love it and I hate it at the same time. It's a love-hate relationship for me for sure. I've met so many awesome people through Instagram, the community that's built around it, so many awesome photographers, and just people in general that I never would have met otherwise.
Oh, for sure.
More than any other social media platform out there, I've met more people through it than any others. Like more real connections and more real people through it.
And not just locally.
Yes.
I have now friends all around the
Yes.
world
Yep.
that I've never met, would have never met through
course.
Facebook,
Yep.
and they comment on photos, they ask
Yeah.
questions, and there is an actual.
And then they roll through town to visit, and then they hit you up and like, hey, let's go shoot. Like, all right. And then you go out to other towns, like, all right, like I'm landing in, Atlanta. Who do I know here? Like, oh yeah, there's this guy. Let's see if he's free. And then next thing you know, like it's
It's
like
been
legit
fantastic
connections,
for
yeah.
that, but other than that, it's garbage.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting app for sure. But yeah. Anyway, I think we'll just about finish up here. But Kind of let things off, or leave things off. I guess one last question for you. So, anybody who's new getting started into portrait photography, lighting, whatever, like what kind of tips would you give anybody who wants to get into kind of doing the type of work that you do, like the really vivid, the really beautiful, like professional, like magazine quality
Boy,
work?
it's a process.
Right.
I can't say that there's one specific thing right off the bat.
And that's fine, but yeah.
But
Tips
if you're
in
going
general.
to do it, the first thing that I would say is get that speed light and get a modifier.
Yep.
I know for me, the biggest difference was when I started adding modifiers to my speed lights. I had a couple of smaller ones that I was using. One was a strip box, another was an octabox, but they were 18 inches.
Yes.
It wasn't until I took that speed light and put it into a 30-inch softbox that I started noticing the difference. So don't be afraid to and you can get a softbox for $45.
Yeah.
They're not expensive.
Even on Amazon, you can go on Amazon. You can get them for $30, $40 for sure.
And now they make the brackets for the speed light where if you have Bowens,
Yep.
the
Little S-mount
Bowens
brackets,
adapter.
yep.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
So get that speed light, but get the softbox with it. That's going to be the biggest thing because what you're going to start noticing is how you want to feather your light.
Yep.
And once you learn that feathering of the light, then you say, okay, well, now I can go get a second speed light. And now I'm going to use that as a hair light. And then it's, okay, I've got that down. Let me get that third light. And then once you get those three, you've got a 3-point system that when you're shooting with a model, you can move, or the model can freely move in that
Right.
studio based off of what you have as power settings. And you're going to go from having a very slow shoot to a very productive shoot that's going to get done faster, and it's going to give you more options as to the photos that you're getting and the poses and expressions and just the highlighting and the shadows. Like for me, shadows are a big thing. When you're starting off, definitely it's the modifiers. I will say that there was a huge difference in my photography maybe about a year and a half ago. I went out and spent a ton of money on the egg crates for my modifiers.
Okay, interesting.
And once I did that, once I got the egg crates, I was able to pinpoint exactly where that light was going.
Yep.
So, it's no longer the whole side of the
Right.
cup. It's a sliver
Right.
coming down the middle. That, for me, was a game changer. So, if you get the chance, and even if you're starting off, get it with the egg crate on there.
Yep.
Because you're going to see that you can now focus and concentrate that. And then, then it was the snoots, and then it was the beauty dish with the grid, and this grid, and that grid, and this grid.
Right.
And it's, everything I do now is, I have at least 2 grids on everything in every shot that I take.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's actually something I've never actually used very much of. I've got one grid for one modifier, and I be honest, I rarely use it. But now you've got me thinking I need to break it out and play with it a little bit more.
It'll be night and day. And if you have your lighting down, even with your strobes and the modifiers, toss a grid on there, you're going to notice a huge difference. So you're going to say, oh my gosh, what was I doing for the last year and a half?
I've definitely had plenty
and
of
you
those
look at it,
moments,
and it's, those grids, they come, and it's a small little grid. Yeah, so the big thing is you look at those grids and you see some of the prices, and it's like $300 for a grid.
Right.
You're like, this is just fabric.
Right.
And so I never bought them. And
Yep.
I was like, I can't justify that. The softbox is $150 and this grid is $300.
Yeah, that seems a little bit
Immediately, that's like
ridiculous,
3 times the cost.
Right.
I'm telling you right now, so worth it. If you are looking just to even dabble with it, Godox makes one. You can get a parabolic for $90 and the grid comes with it.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Big, huge difference.
Yeah, you got me convinced. It's something, like I said, I've rarely used them, and yeah, I might actually look into that myself then. But I definitely agree with the modifier though. Like I've definitely I've had people show up to workshops and they've got speed lights and like, yeah, I use the speed light here and there, and like, okay, how do you use it? And I'm like, oh, mostly on camera or off on a stand by itself. And it's like, yeah, it's that direct light still, and it's like it's such a small light source.
Yeah.
And as soon as you put it in something like a 30 or 36 inch, like a modifier, especially if you've got like a deflector plate in there, softens that light so much. It makes a world of a difference in the quality of light that you're getting.
And I think that's where artificial lighting gets a knock, is because if you use it the right way, it's beautiful.
It is.
But if you're going to go bare bulb it, then of course you're going to have things that look like, well, this looks
Right.
artificial.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that I get a lot of people saying is, well, one, it's the inconvenience of dragging all the gear around. Like, all right, well, that's fine, but if you want something different, like, there might be some inconvenience with it. You just got to suck it up. But the other side that people say is they don't like the quality or they don't like the way it looks. Like, that's the thing I've never understood. If you don't like the way it looks, like, are you?
I think a lot of it has to
white
do with them
balance?
not exactly.
You got to understand, yeah, like, you've got to understand white balance. So if you understand that,
Right.
then it should be fine. And honestly, most of these cameras nowadays, like, they'll auto, like, even if you've got it on auto and you use a flash, most of them can figure that out, and,
Right.
they'll actually correct it, like, after you take the photo.
Right.
So you can have it on auto, it thinks it's gonna be a daylight
And
shot.
even
and then it's
Lightroom will
flash,
fix it, too,
and then
on
it'll fix it
import.
on- Oh yeah, and as long as you're shooting raw, you can always go in and change
Right.
the white balance afterwards, and it's totally fine.
Absolutely.
Even with a JPEG, you've got some latitude to change that afterwards, as long as you're somewhat close. But yeah, I think a lot of people, like, I've never understood that. Like, to me, the quality of light is always so much better. It's so even and it's so crisp, and the
Yeah,
sharpness,
and the colors
the
are
highlight
way
in
more
the
good.
eyes,
Yeah.
the eyes pop, like everything. And like, I've never understood people saying they don't like the way it looks. To me, it only increases the visuals
Right.
in every possible way. And then the only way I could ever see it not is if, yeah, your white balance is
Right.
completely screwy and they turn out way orange. But
Yeah,
like,
right.
just go back in and fix the white balance.
Oh, yep.
And to my opinion, if you're doing portraiture anyway, I mean, you should be editing your photos and you should be correcting for skin cones anyway. So that's something I've never quite fully understood.
The other thing too, if it's not necessarily speed lights, because maybe that's a challenge, pick up like one of the light strips,
Yeah.
an LED.
An
An
LED,
LED
yeah.
is a great way to learn
Yeah, for
because
sure.
you can actually see
Yeah, for
in
sure.
the camera what you're getting.
Yeah, and then a great way, a cheap way of diffusing that too, is just get, like, you've already got a diffuser, like you've got one of the circular diffusers, one of the big rectangular ones. Like, I use that all the time when I'm indoors. I've got an LED light, I'll just pop that guy in front instead of trying to put it inside on a bracket and a big old modifier. I could do that if I wanted to, but sometimes it's easier just to pop out a one-stop diffuser and like put it right in front of it, and then they'll diffuse that LED
Yep.
light even nice. An LED light tends to often be fairly diffuse already, but you throw a diffuser in front of it, and then it's just some of the softest light you'll ever see.
Yep.
I love it for product photography.
It's a lot less retouching too.
A lot less, yeah, for sure. But yeah, absolutely. I love lighting. It's something that I wish I had the opportunity to do more of. It just seems like, and that's the other downside to it. I feel like sometimes you roll up in locations and it's frowned upon. You get kicked out. You need a
Yeah.
permit, and that part can be hard too, because it can limit where you want to shoot for sure. You can't set up just quite anywhere, especially downtown Chicago.
Right.
Like, there's permit police everywhere. They always
yeah.
want you to pay some ridiculous fee to do anything that looks semi-professional. That is
Yeah.
one downside. It can be limiting where you can shoot, but I definitely recommend it to anybody who's looking. At least try it. You know,
Right.
like, at least give it a shot, see if you like it. If you don't, that's fine. But I feel like with most people, if they actually gave it a real try and actually experimented with it for, gave it a real proper chance, I think most people would be able to find a way to work it into
Yeah.
more of the photography for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, anyway, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. And,
Okay.
Thanks for being episode number 1, my first
I
guest.
appreciate it.
Yes, I know it feels weird calling you my guest. I'm in your studio, but
Yeah.
like, it's I don't know. It's been great. It's been fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of these. And yeah, I appreciate
Yeah,
this.
looking forward to it as
Yeah.
well. And thank you for having me be the first one.
Yeah, absolutely awesome.
All right.
Cool, man.
Thanks, Ken.
Awesome.
All right.